Hello, everyone. This is Kristen Brown. I am doing my absolute very first live today on YouTube. I've never done this before, so please bear with me as I factor through things. I don't even know how to tell who's on here, how many people join. I know nothing. You know nothing, Jon Snow. So I am going to share with you some really helpful information, information that I learned upon along the way in my own personal journey of being a people pleaser, and information that I think is really going to help you to reset the foundation that you've been showing up to your relationships. Now, I say foundation because people pleasing comes into place organically. It comes in organically through experiences that we have, and I will get to that in a minute. But the reason why that we are continuing this pattern is because there has been a foundation set inside of us. And unless or until we shift this foundation into something different, we will continue to repeat a pattern over and over again. I'm raising my hand the highest because I had decades of dysfunctional relationship patterns, one right after the other. And it wasn't until I finally had enough and I vowed to remain single and celibate until I figured out why this kept happening to me, did everything start to shift for me. And at that point, it became my inspired mission to share this information with everybody that was willing to listen, because I knew how bad it felt for me to suffer. And there's something inside of me that doesn't like other people to suffer either. So I set course to share this with everybody so that people can learn to heal this pattern for good. The one thing I want you to know before I get started is that you are not broken. You are not unfixable. You are not fatally flawed, nor are you destined to live out your life as a people pleaser. This also doesn't mean when you heal your people pleasing pattern, this does not mean that you are going to do the polar opposite and become a selfish jerk. All right. Now you'll understand all this soon as I break down through what it is that causes this people pleasing and how it is we can shift it. Now, the reason why I talk about the what and the why of people pleasing is when we understand what is happening, why is this happening? Then when we apply the how, it makes sense. So it's really important to know all aspects of this, because many times if you just randomly Google, how do I stop being a people pleaser? You're going to get things like, oh, just start setting boundaries, or think more highly of yourself, or spend more alone time, or put your needs first, or learn to be more assertive, or let's see, what are some of the other things? Know your value, those type of things. But those type of things aren't easily come by. All right. We can't just flip a switch in our brain and just know our value. Trust me, I've tried. And we can't just flip a switch in our brain and say, I'm going to set and maintain some really serious, hardcore, awesome boundaries. It just doesn't work. In fact, if we have the wherewithal to be able to do that at first, like we kind of get sort of good at it and we're like, okay, I can set a boundary, but somewhere along the line, you just start to weaken and then you let the boundary go. If this is you, you can comment over there in chat. Like I said, this is my very first YouTube live. I have not done this yet, but I've been live on other platforms. So it's not scary, but I just need to figure out how everything is working here. So that was my case. My story was that I understood right from wrong. I understood when I wasn't being treated well. I understood that I was not getting what I was giving. And I was a giver and a nurturer and a lover. And I was doing everything for other people all the time. I was extremely generous. And on top of that, I'm an energy reader and I could tell where people needed help. A lot of people call that empath. I call that energy reading. And I was able to see the sadness behind somebody's eyes, and I thought I could fix them. And I really did. Like, this was innocent on my part. If this is you, you can comment in chat and say, yep, I understand that gig. But what I noticed was that I just started to become less as the relationship went on. And this person was walking around all happy and gay because they were getting all satisfied from me, but I was getting nothing in return. And I couldn't figure out why. In fact, I will tell you that I really honestly believed it was just the luck of the draw, that if I kept pulling from the deck, that eventually I was going to pull a king, and it never happened. And I didn't know why, because I knew deep down I was a very good person. I was loyal. I didn't lie, all the things. And I couldn't understand, why did I keep attracting this to me, and why some girls over there that were total bees were attracting these most amazing guys. So I'm going to start breaking this down for you all. And it's not really complicated. And I'm really hoping if this starts like ringing bells in your head and you're just like, oh my God, this finally makes sense. This finally makes sense. That I hope you leave me a message down there in the chat. I keep looking around my microphone. I got this Mac Daddy boy here that, a lot of people have the hanging microphones. Mine sits on my desk, and it's my podcasting microphone. And I really hope that the sound is good for you guys. Like I said, this is the first time that I've been on here, and I see that I have some listeners. So that's kind of groovy. I'm loving it. And I would like to have some interaction. So if you guys want to do that, let's do it. Okay. So I want to start way from the beginning about how people pleasing takes form. I'm going to first tell you guys this: that people pleasing is a pandemic. Okay. I'm not playing on words. I'm not trying to discount anything that's happened in the past couple of years, but I do want to tell you that it is an absolute pandemic. All right. So when we discover that we're either a doormat or a people pleaser, and I use those words synonymously, they interplay together. Codependency is also kind of in there, neediness, desperation, like all these things. These are a lot of terms that people don't like to own. Okay. They're like, oh my God, I'm not a doormat, or I'm not needy. Well, I'm also here to help take the stigma off of these words, because they're just freaking words. And all they're doing is alerting us. They're giving us information as to how we are showing up in life. I was needy. Now, I wasn't like stage 5 Klingon stalker needy, but I was needy and I didn't know it. Like, I really needed people to fill me up because I couldn't sustain that for myself. I didn't know that. At some stage in my life, I was in and out of desperation. I'll explain what these two things mean. In fact, I'm going to write that down so I don't forget. Because I forget things sometimes. So I'm going to write those down so I can come back to that. But there was a stage in my life that I would call myself desperate. Now, this was not panting, knocking down people's doors, blowing up Match.com or anything like that. It was just this nudge inside of me that just felt like I had to have a partner. I just needed to have a partner. Like, I just have to have a partner. And I now recognize that as desperation. And you know what, you guys? These are normal human feelings. This is part of the human experience. Okay. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but we have come to this planet to experience unconditional love. Actually, this will segue really nicely into what I want to share with you guys, and how to reset the foundation of your how to reset the foundation so you stop being a people pleaser. Okay, so when we come to this earth, all right, we are souls. Yes, I am a spiritual being. I subscribe to no religions, no dogma, no doctrine. I am a spiritual person, though. I'm a spiritual life coach and mentor and author. And we come here from the outer world, wherever it is, you might call it heaven, you might call it the universe, wherever it is, wherever that energy we lie out there in the world. We come here little souls, and we enter into a human body. Okay. Now, when we're in when we first come into this human body, we know nothing other than the unconditional love of our source. We don't question our worth. It's not even a thing. It's just not even a thing. Okay. It's like, do we really think that there's oxygen? No, it's just not really a thing. We don't think about it. Do we worry whether the sun is going to rise and set? No, it's just not a thing. We just know it's a thing. That's how it is when we come into the human body. We know nothing other than the unconditional love of God's source, universe, or whatever you like to call it, your higher power or energy, infinite intelligence. Okay. We know nothing other than that. And so we're in this little human body, but now we're in a human body. Okay. And we have a brain. And in the first 0 to 2 years of life, we are in what is called the delta brainwave state. I'm not going to get super technical here. I'm going to keep it very, very simple. But in that brainwave state, it's a very low brainwave state, and we are mostly asleep. That's why babies sleep all the time. But again, they're still in that state. They're very, very, very connected to their inner world. Okay, from 2 to 6, we enter the delta theta brainwave state, which most of you know and understand as the meditative state. Now, this doesn't mean we're only in one or the other. we go in and out of these throughout the day, okay? But now we enter into another state, which is theta. And what happens in theta is that we just are starting to kind of become conscious of the outside world and the environment around us. So what does that mean? Well, if you think about if you've ever been in meditation, where you're really in kind of this state where you're really kind of in the ethers, but yet you will hear a noise or you'll hear a car beep as it's driving by. You're sort of aware of what's going on around you, but not completely connecting to it, nor are you judging it or anything else. You're just, it's just a thing. So then from 6 to 12, we enter the alpha brainwave state. Now, in that brainwave state, we are really starting to wake up to the outside world. And this is where Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's one of my favorite mentors of all time, I just love him. I love his work. If you don't know about him, I'm not affiliated with him, so I'm not getting paid for this. Someday, maybe. But I want you to look up his work, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And in the alpha brainwave state, we are really, excuse me, guys, we are really starting to wake up to the outside world, and that is between the ages of 6 and 12. Now, in that stage, that is when the programming happens. We've all heard about programming and conditioning and these type of things that happen. And then from 12 plus, we have beta. And sometimes Dr. Joe calls it high beta, like when we're really in a state of, so much is going on. Now, once we hit into beta, that also means we do go back down to delta because we do sleep. We can be in theta, we can be in alpha, but we can also be in beta. Okay. But as we start to wake up, so to speak, or become conscious is another way to word it, right? We're becoming more aware of the outside world. Well, we are moving further away from our inner world, which is what we know and understand is the unconditional love of source, God, universe. And only thing we know is our worth. But as we start growing and our brain starts forming and we form something that's called the ego, and the ego is designed to protect us, believe it or not. It could be a dastardly little thing that really it's trying to keep us small. It's trying to keep us constricted. It's igniting fear into us so that we don't branch out. Okay. And once the ego starts to form, when messages come to us from the outside world, it can come from parents, it can come from friends, it can come from magazines, it can come from religions, it can come from anywhere. Once these messages start coming to us from the outside world, then our brain starts to process these messages and we start to believe there's something wrong with us. And I'm just sitting there in silence for a minute for that to sink in. Remember, we knew nothing other than our worth. But then these messages come to us and we start to think we're too much. This is in a nutshell. We're too much or we're not enough. Okay. When that happens, something clicks inside of us. And unconsciously, we believe that the outside world took this away from us. Okay. So we start to scan and seek for ways to get love, approval, and acceptance. And most often this happens by what I call donning masks. Okay. So one of my masks back in the day was funny girl. Now, as I was coming up, I remember this really starting to take root around 6th to 8th grade, somewhere in there, where, whatever had happened to me and I started to believe I was unworthy. Like I said, it's a pandemic. We all have this. I remember I would make people laugh. And when people started to say she was funny, I saw that I got approval from that. So I started to be funny girl. That was one of the masks I wore. And I believed I had to be funny all the time in order to get love, approval, and acceptance. Or if I was feeling particularly down, I thought that's how I needed to do it. One of my clients said it was around 8th grade, freshman year. She said she was painfully shy her whole life. But as she started growing and becoming, more, going through puberty and becoming more of, a woman look. And people liked the way she dressed, and they liked her physique and things like that. And they started to give her attention for those things. When that started to happen for her, she said that's when she started to believe that her worth was her physical exterior. So that's all she cared about was fine tuning her physical exterior and making sure that her hair was good, her body was good, everything was perfect. And she never was able to work on her insides because as long as people thought she was pretty or thought her body was nice or whatever, she was wearing the latest and greatest clothes, then she felt like she was loved, approved of, and accepted. See what I'm saying? So this can be intellectual person. One of my other masks was easygoing girl. which means I'm just going to be easygoing. Everything you do is fine with me. No, I don't mind. I'm not going to be a bother. Because one of the messages I received, just again, based on just society, was that I'm a bother. If I have feelings or emotions or something to that effect, then I'm annoying and I'm a bother. So I sought to not be a bother. So I'm sure you guys are understanding this right now. I'm still looking down here at the chat to make sure that anybody wants to comment. That would be fantastic. If you have any questions, please, by all means, just comment down there so that so I can answer those questions for you. Okay, so moving along, what happens is that we start to don these masks and we become people that we're not because we believe the outside world is our source of worth. And what do? We dim down, we play small, we overgive, we over accommodate, we say yes to everything, we rarely say no, we compromise our sacred selves, we do things that we don't want to do, we lose who we are because at this point we don't even know what we're all about because we're so busy pleasing the masses, okay? And we lose who we are. We become people pleasers, all for the sake of love, approval, and acceptance. So how do we get this back? I want to make sure I'm on track here. Okay. So how do we get this back? Right? This is the foundation that needs to change. So when people say to us, oh, just set a boundary, or oh, just become more assertive, or oh, just know your worth, or oh, just, these things that people tell us to do, they make it sound like it's so easy, like we're literally going to flip a switch on us, flip a switch, and all of a sudden we're this empowered person that knows our worth. And it just doesn't work that way because we've been functioning in the world for so long in this particular way that it has become ingrained in us. It is our automatic. It is our go-to. It is our autopilot. It is our conditioned way of being. Not only that, it feels like it's part of us. Okay. Now here's the thing is that I am an easygoing person. Okay. Like that is thing. And I am pretty funny. At least I think I am. But I no longer feel like I have to do those things to get approval. I don't have to be on. I don't have to turn it on. I don't have to meet all the needs of other people all the time with sacrificing my sacred self. So the one thing I can tell you for sure is that when you start to heal, I'm going to tell you how in a minute, you're probably going to be fascinated. When you start to heal that foundation, what happens is you don't lose who you are. In fact, you gain who you are. You return back to the love of self. You return back to your worth. You return back to your authenticity. There's no reason. You will have no reason, no motivation. The filter that you had been seeing the world will be taken away. However, you don't change into someone negative or nasty or bossy or bitchy or dicky or whatever it might be. What happens is you become a cleaner, clearer, and more centered version of your authentic self. And guess what happens? You start attracting people to you that love, honor, and respect you. Because when we are not loving, honoring, and respecting ourselves, we are going to attract people who are going to mirror that back to us. Relationships are a mirror to how we treat ourselves. When I discovered that and I really looked at that, first thing I did was looked at all the ways all these men, all these partners in the past, boyfriends and some husbands, had treated me. And I made a list. I was disrespected. I was dishonored. I was taken for granted. I was not made a priority. I was not protected. I was abused sometimes. I was used sometimes. I attracted addicts, people that either had a sex addiction or some type of substance abuse addiction, whatever it was. I kept attracting these people that couldn't put me first, okay, and did not treat me well and dishonored me. When I went back and said, okay, with each thing, how have you treated yourself that way, Kristen? The writing was on the wall. I had disrespected myself. I had dishonored myself. I had not protected myself. I did not make myself a priority. So it was me that was treating me like that. And that's why the world was reflecting it back to me. Excuse me. Okay, allergy season in Arizona. By the way, I'm in Arizona. I would love if you guys put in the chat down there where you guys are from, where you're listening from. I would love to hear from you. Okay, so what happens is that when here's unworthiness. When unworthiness starts to take root inside of us, okay, here it is. Here we are, and we know nothing other than our unconditional love of source, and we don't question our worth, we don't question our value, we question nothing. But when the unworthiness and shame start to take root, then it manifests in one of two ways. Okay. It either goes one direction, which is over on the giver scale, or the other direction, which is on the taker scale. Okay. This direction makes the needs of everybody else more important. And this direction makes one's own needs the most important. Okay. So you get where I'm getting at here. This might be what some people call the empath narcissism gig, which I don't subscribe to that, but I'll tell you why. So this can be what people call empath. This could be what people call narcissism. However, I'm going to throw this in here that empath only means energy reading. It's picking up on the energy of other people, which, by the way, we can all do that because we're all made up of energy. Some people are better at it than others. Some people are more sensitive to it than others, but we are all that. Okay. So that's why I like to call it the giver and the taker. All right. So if you are in both of these, things can be mild or they can be extreme. Now that's when you're getting into narcissism and the extreme of people pleasing. Neediness would be maybe something translated into stalking. So wherever a person is at on this scale is how that unworthiness takes root. Okay. Now, no matter where you're at on this scale, typically you're going to attract the person that is the equivalent to that on the other side. So if you are a people pleaser, or an over giver, you're going to attract someone who is an overtaker. If you make it all about other people, they want it all about them. Guess what? It's a key fitting a lock. It's like blink. And this is why that happens, because we are an energetic match. When we're the overgivers, we're going to attract an overtaker. So the key and the purpose of this whole thing is to move from this side of the spectrum back to zero, back to center. Okay. When we're centered, we are no longer needy. And desperate and over giving, and we are no longer selfish and overtaking. Okay. This can also be hyper dependent, and this can be hyper independent. So what happens is we come towards the center and we become interdependent. And what is interdependent? That means that we meet our own needs as well as meeting the needs of other people. Fascinating, right? So how do we heal this? How do we get to that state of healthiness so that we start attracting to us somebody who is a better vibrational match? How do we do it? Drum roll. Self-love. Now, some of you might be going, oh, self-love. Got enough of this self-love gig. What is this self-love gig? I take a bath, or I hold a crystal, or I light a candle, and all of a sudden the good things are going to happen. That's not self-love. Okay, that's all about energy. That's self-care. Some of that is self-care. But there are 5 tenets of self-love. And when you apply these tenets to yourself, which is what I did in those 2 years that I mentioned at the top of this, where I remained single and celibate, for 2 years, I was healing myself, and I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know what was happening. All I know is that I started to apply spiritual principles to myself, and I started to change organically in a higher vibrational, loving, calmer, more centered, more assertive, boundary holding mofo. Like I had no trouble. I was no longer afraid of losing people. I was no longer afraid of being disliked because I finally had made myself a priority. And again, this doesn't mean that I became selfish. It means I became very, very centered in self. And you can do this too. So the first self-love tenet is grace and forgiveness of self. Okay. Self means of you or of me. Love means of God, the highest possible energy in the entire universe that ever was and ever will be. Okay. So when you start applying grace and forgiveness to yourself, you are going to heal yourself in a very, very foundational way that you hadn't before. Okay. The second self-love tenet is respect and protection of self. When you start to apply grace and forgiveness and you start to soften on the inside in a good way, and you start to heal and you start to realize your worth, then you're more apt to respect and protect yourself, because now you are seeing yourself as a worthy individual. No longer are you walking around thinking you're not enough or you're too much and you have to become this something else to please everybody else. You're now realizing how worthy you actually are. And when you start respecting yourself and applying self-protection, I do not mean guardedness. And I have to disclaim that, because a lot of people think that self-protection is like snapping your fingers in a Z formation and not letting people, all of this type of thing. Or I'm going to guard my heart. I'm not letting anybody in, and they're going to have to prove it to me in order for me. That is the wrong vibe. The vibe you want is, I got me, and I have high standards of treatment of me. Unapologetically, without attack, without ego, and without arrogance. It's a neutral, calm, centered feeling. When someone does something to you and it's like, you're like, nope, I'm out skis, because you're not going to allow that any longer. The third one is compassion and acceptance of self. What does this mean? This means that we all are divine and unique human beings. Okay, we're all so incredibly different. First of all, we have DNA that no one has ever had, no one that ever came to this earth before us, and no one who is going to be on this earth after us. And not only that, we come here with divine gifts and talents, things that we are to share with the world. Okay, when we accept who we are unconditionally, this is who I am. Whether it is you laugh loud, you don't laugh loud, you're tall, you're short, you're this, you're that, uh, you love flowers, you love horses, you want to be a proctologist, you are a florist, you want to climb Everest, whatever it is, when you accept that of yourself and know that you're perfectly designed. You are perfectly designed. And when you accept who you are and you show up in the world as that, without apology, with love, with acceptance, with compassion of who you are, when you show up in the world like that, what happens is you send off a ripple effect of other people, a vibration of to call other people that want exactly what you are in their life. Okay? Because when we're wearing all these masks left and right, what happens is we're calling people in that are attracted to the mask, not our true essence. But our true essence still tries to eke out and still tries to be seen, but yet they're used to the mask. They're used to this. That's when a lot of problems come along, because they're like, wait a minute, I thought you were like this, but now you're saying you're like this, and this is where it gets messy. But when you can show up to a relationship as is, 100% who you are, without apology, this is who I am, and I accept me, then you no longer at the mercy of sabotaging yourself or sacrificing yourself, hoping that somebody else is going to accept you. Okay. The fourth self-love tenet is loving and supportive self-talk. Now, we've heard a lot of this before, right? A lot of this stuff you've probably already heard millions of times. It's out there in the world right now. And I'm hoping that you have not heard it quite laid out the way that I've laid it out for you. And if you're only jumping on the live now, I really encourage you, I will save this, encourage you to go back and listen from the beginning. It's not going to be super long. I'm not going to stay on here forever, but I'm really encouraging you to listen to it from the beginning, because I'm giving you what I believe is the miracle cure to people pleasing. It cured me, and it's cured all my clients afterwards and the people that I have taken through my courses. And by the way, if I haven't mentioned this yet, I have written my second book. So excited. It's due to be released in November of 2022, which is literally next month, like very, very soon. It's in the formatting stages right now. I have to prove things. There's a lot of back and forth. But I wrote this book this year. And I am so incredibly not only proud of this book, but I am so happy to release it into the world, because nothing makes me feel better than to help other people break free from their painful and lopsided relationships, because you're worth more than that. You don't deserve that. I didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that. And when you start to heal this mechanism inside of you, guess what's coming your way? Mm-hmm. Even if you're in a relationship now, because you will start to show up a different energy and a more empowered person. And that's going to shift the dynamic of your existing relationship. Okay, moving on. Loving and supportive self-talk. What this means is, have you ever honestly listened to yourself, how you talk to yourself? I mean, when I started to pay attention to this, I was flabbergasted. I was absolutely appalled, because I was listening to myself and I was like, oh my God, you're a bully. You are a bully. You're mean. You're insufferable. I was horrific to myself. And guess what? I would never talk like that to anybody else. So why was I doing it to me? Now, part of this is conditioning, programming, experiences that we've had and beliefs that were formed about this, and things, words that were spoken over us. So some of that stuff is a little bit more engrooved than just us having, a crappy conversation with ourselves. But this will only take mental discipline. It will take mindfulness to start to catch the way you are speaking to yourself. When I started speaking kindly to myself, I could not believe how my life changed. No longer was I desperate for approval of other people's, because I was giving it to me. So I hope you guys are getting so far that it's what we give ourselves, that love, approval, acceptance, forgiveness, grace, compassion, all those things that we give ourselves, including self-talk, gentle, kind, encouraging. Be your own best friend, be your own cheerleader, and be your own advocate. When you start to be those things to you, you are going to shift on the inside, which is going to automatically reflect your outside. I mean, I think it was Hermes Trismegistus or Trismegistus. I can't pronounce his name well. I don't have it written in front of me. It's long. Hermes Trismegistus, I think his name was, where he said, as within, so without. What that means is, as within, what is happening within is what we will receive on the outside. I have never been more respected, more loved, more cared for, more taken care of than I ever have in the relationship that I'm in now. But I had to do this work first. Now, I also want to tell you guys, this work isn't hard. A lot of people, oh, it's so hard. It's so hard. I'm here to telling you, for someone who's lived it up close and personal for 12 years, the work wasn't hard. It just took dedication. That's all it took. It wasn't like someone said, carry 800 pounds up this hill, right? It wasn't hard. It just took dedication. It took time of me implementing these things. And I started to naturally shift on the inside, to the point that I stood there one day and I went, when I saw myself not react in some old pattern to somebody, when I acted in this more centered, I was like, what the hell just happened? It blew my mind. I was like, and I literally stopped and I said, what's happening? What's happening? What's happening? And I answered my own question. I said, you no longer feel desperate. You no longer feel needy. You have worth now. That's when I knew that this was the miracle cure. Okay. And the very, very last one is self-care. Now, we hear this a lot in the world. People interchange self-care and self-love a lot, and that's fine. However they want to do it. I'm going to word it my way, though. So remember, we talked about self-love is of self, applying love to self, and that is the things of God, right? That's self. I get drink water. Stand by. Arizona, it's dry here. So, but self-care is literally that, applying care to the self. Are you caring for yourself? Are you taking care of your sleep? Are you taking care of your belly, your intestines, your food? Are you taking care of your spirituality? I will tell you this, you guys, when I get into a funk, because I'm human and I still get into funks from time to time, the one thing that I always recognize every single time, if I have gotten out of my spirituality practice, it's just the way it is, right? And I'm like, all right, got to return back to that. So are you taking care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit? That's what self-care is. So your body might be, I take a walk every day. That's my thing. Not only for my body, but it's also for my mind and my spirit. Okay. Oh, they're over there. I can't grab them, but I do tarot card readings, positive tarot card readings where I just put a little message down, like 4 cards, nothing big deal. And usually I just shuffle. I do nothing is like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like really super to the letter. I just shuffle cards, and if a couple fall out, I read them, and I journal about them. I write them down so that they stick and it can start to change my energy. All right. Food. I am gluten free. I'm not celiac. I'm not anything like that, but gluten has some problems for me. So I don't eat gluten. I eat very little dairy. I don't drink alcohol. I drink mostly water and unsweetened green tea with my cafe mocha in the morning. But that's it. I have learned how to take care of myself so that I can function in the utmost of energy. So you see how all of these things combined are going to change the foundation that you show up in relationships. When I talked about taking the 2 years off from romantic relationships to remain single and celibate because I just couldn't do that anymore. I mean, it was just crap. All right. And I tell this whole story in my book, my upcoming book, The Recovering People Pleaser, a spiritual guide to reclaim your true worth and attract the love you deserve, coming in November 2022. When I took those 2 years off, in hindsight, looking back, I said to myself, what was that? Because it was such a time of concentrated growth, study. I didn't even so much as have a coffee with a male person. I mean, I literally went from boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend from 15 years old up and through to 42. And it was one right after the other. And I was like, no more, because I'm doing something wrong. Obviously, I'm the common denominator. And I call that time the College of Kristen. I didn't know it was going to be 2 years, and it didn't even probably really need to be 2 years. But I vowed that I was not going to even start trying to attempt to date again until I had some firm foundation underneath me, and I knew what was breaking or what was causing this pattern and how I could break it for good. And let me tell you something. There's a lot of really great stories about this, but I won't get into all that. But when I started to date who is now my current husband, I look back on that and I was a different person in a good way. Like I said, you become a more centered and grounded and authentic version of who you are. You don't get bitchy, you don't get mean when you heal your people pleasing, nor do you get selfish. But you do get centered in self and you know who you are. And the ways that I showed up to him from day one, I didn't sell a false front to him hoping he would stay around. Okay. I didn't do things that I thought would land him. And but certainly did not audition for him. But that's for another episode. Because sometimes we feel like we need to audition. We got to wear the right dress and clean our car and do all these things to go on a date. That's for another episode. In fact, I'll do another live soon about that. I showed up exactly who I am because I wanted him to fall in love, if he was going to, with who I authentically am. I didn't want to sell him a false front. I didn't want to be an imposter. I didn't want to be a mask wearing people pleaser. I wanted to be me, all of me. I laugh loud. I did all the things that I do. And guess what happened? He appreciated that about me because he was not out to find somebody to control or to use or to abuse. All right. He was not that key to the lock. It was two interdependent people coming together. All right. All right, you guys, I'm going to close it up with that today. This has been wonderful. I mentioned in the beginning of this that this is my very first YouTube live. I've been live everywhere else and I've not been on here before. So I do have a channel that I'm hoping to do more videos on. I've had so many projects going on. I spend a lot of time over Instagram. If you guys haven't been there, you can find me over there at self_love_junkie, JUNKIE, self-love junkie with underscores in between. You can also go to my website that I put in the show notes down there. So you can find all my social channels. And also I'm a top mentor at a social audio app called Wisdom. Wisdom is an amazing app. I was asked to join back in the beta phase. They found me via my podcast and they asked me to join as a top mentor and help them launch the app. And I've had an amazing experience over there. I'm not sure, I've given over 100 and something talks by now. And it's really a great place to be able to connect and have conversations one-on-one. There is people in the audience. However, if that's something that you're interested in, that it is now not only on iPhones, but it is also on Android as well. And I will say on Instagram, I don't do a lot of this type of stuff. I make really goofy reels on topic, has to do with toxicity and things like that, people pleasing. But I'm not your standard. I'm kind of a jokester because I like to have fun. Fun is how I keep one of the ways I keep my vibration high. So I hope you guys can join me over there. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe. You might even want to share this if you've got someone who you really think it could find some value in this. This is my life's work. This is what I'm driven to do. And this is what I want to help fellow brothers and sisters. Okay. This is not, I was talking to my husband the other day and I said, this isn't just about women's empowerment. And I had such a hard time when marketers were trying to say, narrow your niche, narrow your niche, narrow your niche. I'm like, this is really about shame and unworthiness recovery so that we can show up in the world more rounded versions of our authentic selves. And so that we can raise our vibration and attract better relationships to us. When I say I'm no stranger to it, my first boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. My second boyfriend was physically abusive and cheated on me. My next relationship after that, I was absolutely not a priority. I was the last on the list. I had my God, like dated five back-to-back alcoholics that didn't give a hoot about me. Second, let me see, another one in between. Uh, yep, I was the other woman in one of those, unbeknownst to me. I mean, it was just one thing after the other in these relationships. I was like, there's got to be a better way. So I want to leave you with this one thing. I want to leave you with some faith, and I want to leave you with some hope, because here's the deal. You are amazing. There's no one like you. You do not need to apologize for any aspect of your personality. Yes, you want to own your weaknesses, but you also want to own your strengths. You want to become really, really aware of all this value that you are. Your value is not your car. It's not the shape of your butt or the size of your boobs or your male parts. It has nothing to do with your height, your skin color, your hair color, how long it is, short it is, whatever else. I will tell you one thing, there is someone for everyone. All right. So if you think you need to look like, Mary Joe down the street or so-and-so over here or Bob, Jack, or Jim, or you need to have this money or this, you don't need any of those things. I guarantee you, when you tap into who you truly are and you learn to love yourself unconditionally, that your ideal person is going to hear this beacon from afar and you are going to be like a magnet that calls them in. Not only that, when the typical stuff that shows up in relationships, because they do, because they're not designed to be perfect, there's no white knight, there's no white princess that's going to come and save us. It's just not going to happen. But when the typical things show up in relationships, you are going to show up as a more beautiful, rounded, centered, healthy version of yourself so that the struggles will be easier to handle. I'm telling you guys. Just telling you. Thank you guys for listening so much. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and also share with someone else. And I'm going to click end stream. This was my first live YouTube stream. It's kind of fun. I really enjoyed this. Like, who knew I'd be doing this on a Sunday night? But I just had the feeling last night. I'm like, I'm going to try a YouTube live stream. So here we are. Thank you guys for listening. Kristen Brown here. And one last thing. If you would like to get my book, The Recovering People Pleaser, it will be available on all major book selling platforms sometime in November. I'm telling you the date. This is not a marketing strategy. I do not know the date yet. You can go to my website, which is listed below in the show notes here, kristenbrown.org, and you scroll down just a tad on the homepage, and there'll be a box where you can put in your email address, and then I'm going to notify everybody when it becomes live or released or launched or whatever the fancy word is. So I thank you guys so much for listening. And if you're just joining now and you haven't had a chance, go back to the beginning of this. It's a really, really good episode, if I say so myself. And it's really going to change the way that you are perceiving your people pleasing. And once you know what the what and the why is, the how makes sense. Peace, everybody. Much love.